You ever looked at the world and seen how terrible things happen sometimes? And I don't mean like volcanoes and hurricanes, stuff like that, because we can't do much about it, but I'm kind of talking about things like poverty, inequality, war, and stuff like that, because I mean these are completely man-made issues caused by people wanting way more than they actually need right now. Usually it happens because a bunch of people listen to some dude who supposedly had the answers to the problems that they supposedly had, but then like a war or something like that happens and people think,
we fucked up.
and it's just like a vicious cycle of people trying to figure life out. Like we're trying to control what time of day our avocados are going to be ripe so that we can make sure we get our Buddha bowl on time. Or the color of the hair on our child.
It is going to be possible to pick traits because somebody has a taste for a particular child or a preference for a particular child.
Or the exact figure that we're going to have in our bank account at age 87 and a half. This is a story about how we've been indoctrinated by idiots and manipulated into thinking that there's only one way to live. Their way. We're brought up under this impression that everything we do needs to be for someone else or for another time that's anywhere but here. It's for your future. It's so God doesn't banish you to hell or wherever you're convinced you might go when you kick the bucket in this life. It's so you make your folks happy. It's so you're a respectable and contributing member of society. It's all we hear from our parents, teachers, movies, TV shows.
Yeah, Mom has a stupid idea about work.
That's enough. You boys heard your mother. We have always said you have to concentrate on your schoolwork before wasting your time on dead-end jobs. You have got your whole life to work and only one chance to learn.
I told them to get jobs, Hal.
The value of hard work.
You see, the problem with preparing for your future from such a young age is that you never actually have the time and space to deliberate with yourself and find out what your unique interests are. And the beaten track that's laid in front of us with everybody else on it doesn't really allow us to find our own unique position in the world and in the marketplace. And ironically, these are the things that, if fostered, would prepare us for our future. But the problem is, it's almost impossible to systemize something as complex and spontaneous as self-actualization for billions of people in the world. And so this is kind of the solution that we're handed instead. It usually starts off with education, or school is probably a more accurate term. You hear things like, you only need to learn for a little while. Once you finish, then you'll be able to start your life, maybe find yourself a husband or a wife, and then it's time to save because next you'll have a child, and well, that's not cheap, and somehow it's normal to spend your week in a place that you don't like in anticipation for a Friday, and then you'll spend the next 2 days wishing they wouldn't go away. And there you have it, mapped out for you on your behalf by the people that came before you. And surely they must have it all figured out. Or maybe it's all just bullshit. I remember school was a pretty miserable place for me to be. I didn't want to be there. And the words I recall my dad saying more often than not were, school just takes up a tiny part of your life, and you can do what you want once you're educated. And so I thought, okay, cool. I'd look at the teachers and the parents and think, well, they must know best. And for a while I believed it. I would look at the people about to graduate and think, well, they must have it figured out. They had beards, they drove cars, smoked cigarettes, had sex. These people were the pinnacle of maturity. But then I got to be their age and I still hadn't figured out. And that's when it hit me. You have to finish college first.
We're going to college, for real?
I mean, it made sense that there would be just one more thing between me and the joyful life that I would soon be living. And that was it. Just a short 4 years later, to my absolute surprise, I was more miserable than I'd ever been. There I was at the ripe age of 22, having just lived what many would call the best years of my life. I had yet to make a single decision for myself. The things I felt pulled toward, music and creative expression, were deemed an impractical place to concentrate my efforts. Echoes of others' concern for my choices. Is there any money in that? Well, that's a great hobby to have. What's your plan B? We're conditioned to choose a path based on what the end goal might be, rather than consideration to how we relate to the journey that gets us there. Having ideas of what we want of life, where we might live, the types of relationships we have, that's great. These ideas that we have inspire us to take action in our lives, and that's important. But it's also important to be open and to let things flow. Life is full of surprises, and the whole point in a surprise is that you don't know about it until it appears. Stop trying to figure it out. You don't need to know everything. In fact, trying to know everything and plan every step of the route almost always ends up in some sort of tragedy. Because one day the bus isn't gonna come. Maybe it gets stuck in traffic or the bus driver gets sick. And then you have two options. You can either try and get the bus to come, call up a bunch of people, shout, kick up a fuss, or you can find another route to where you're going. And maybe along that route you find someone who becomes a new friend. Maybe they become a lover, and maybe even you spend the rest of your life with them. All because you decided that you weren't going to stick to the fixed route of this bus that you wanted to be on so badly. We keep pushing our happiness back to when we have this or that, as if there's something specific that we need to attain, as if there's something to figure out. Look at what's here. It's all you've got, and it's great. If you can't find something in the mess that you're in, chances are you won't find anything in your so-called dream place either. Keep messing up, and not because it makes you better. I mean, it will, but that's just a side effect. Screw up and make mistakes because you're here to experience things. And all of the things, not just the things your silly old mind has decided it wants to experience based on its limited understanding of all of this. We're guaranteed nothing in this life beyond the moment that exists right now. And that doesn't mean just assume you won't make it to 25, 30, or 50, or whatever. It just means stop living for that point in the future with complete disregard for right now. Maybe you will get there and achieve all of your dreams, and I hope you do. But chances are, if you get there and all you've done in life is wait for that moment with no regard for the moments in between, you'll just end up doing more of the same when you finally do arrive. Stop chasing certainty. Stop chasing this idea of safety. Stop running. Stop trying to be someone else. Stop trying to do something else. Listen to the birds or the traffic in the street. Feel the sensation of your ass as you sit on your seat. Be in awe of the breath you receive, and when things don't work out the way you wanted, it's okay to grieve, but don't think for a second that the life you lead is any better or worse based on what you've been led to believe, because you see, the things that we perceive are always changing, and when life throws you a curveball, maybe it's just rearranging, and right now that might seem strange and even a little frustrating, but it's not an ultimatum. If the path you found has some uneven ground, it's okay to slow down. It's not a race to the finish line. You don't have to get there by a certain time. Take a moment and consider the fact that I am alive. Because if you spend all of your time waiting to be happy or wishing away your sadness, then can you say you've lived or just contributed to the madness? Was life to you just a stopover on the way to your next destination? An opportunity for 80 odd years of procrastination? Look, this fixation we have on figuring it out, putting our efforts everywhere but now, I don't think it's working. At least as far as I can see. That's all from me.